Welcome back! This is slightly off-center, and today's episode is called Have You Talked to a Wall? It's not really about walls, it's about how materials, wood, stone, paper, air, can speak. Not in language, but through time, use, and memory. Thinking and feeling don't just happen inside our heads. They're shaped by what we touch, hear, smell, and move through. They're shaped by the world. So what happens when we pause and start paying attention to it? Matter doesn't carry meaning by itself. It's when we meet it with attention, feeling, and thought that it begins to exist for us. I invite you to try this sometime. Place your hand on the surface of a table. Close your eyes and listen to the breeze. Walk through a quiet hallway and notice the way sound bounces off tile, wood, stone. What you're sensing, what you're feeling, isn't just an object, it's a relationship. When we visit a museum, we often admire artifacts for their form or history. But sometimes what moves us is subtler. It might be the paper's grain, the way the ink has faded, the texture of a frame. Even photographs change. What once felt sharp and immediate can fade with time. The paper yellows, the edges curl, the image softens. But in that aging, something new emerges. A different kind of presence, maybe even a different kind of story. And we don't come to them empty either. We bring our memories, our moods, the stories we've lived. When we look at an old photograph, we might see not just what was captured, but something it reminds us of. A face, a place, a feeling. In that moment, the image and the viewer collaborate. It means something different because we're the ones looking. And that's really what this episode is about. Not creativity as output, but creativity as listening, as co-presence, as the quiet space where material and attention meet. I've written before that creativity resists explanation, but even without words, we reach for it. Through color, through shape, through gesture, and maybe through silence too. I once wandered through Hong Kong without a map, letting the streets lead me, slipping through humid tunnels draped in vines, and then, suddenly, stepping into a clearing of old buildings. I had never lived there, but something about them felt familiar, as if they remembered lives I had only imagined. The stone railings worn smooth by decades of touch, the green metal window frames, the paper stone floor tiles, and the flickering gas lamps. Not designed for nostalgia, but now made nostalgic by time. These things, once practical, now carry a softness. And I wondered, why do they stay with me? Maybe it wasn't the design details that stayed with me. Maybe it was the way the materials held traces of someone else's life. A smooth railing, a chipped tile, the shadow of an old window frame. Each one made me wonder who once walked here, what they saw, what they left behind. Perhaps I wasn't drawn to the architecture itself, but to how the materials revealed themselves over time, shaped not just by hands, but by weather, waiting, and wear. In Zhuangzi's story of Ziqing, the bell stand maker waits for the right tree to appear. He doesn't force the form, he listens. But as I reflect more, it almost felt like I was the one being invited, by the materials themselves, to pay attention. This too is creative work, the kind that doesn't begin with a plan, but with a presence. As I stood in those old buildings, I imagined the past. The clatter of pots, the hum of opera on the radio, the smell of roasted sweet potatoes from the street below. I wasn't just remembering, I was sensing what had been left behind, and somehow I was part of it. In Buddhism, there's the idea of non-self elements, that we're not separate but shaped by everything we're connected to, that we inherit not just genetics but gestures, habits, and ways of seeing. When I touched the wall, maybe I wasn't just touching brick, maybe I was meeting something that had already shaped me. So, have you talked to a wall? Have you stood still long enough to hear what something worn, chipped, or faded might say? Maybe creativity isn't just about making. Maybe it's also about receiving. If this reflection resonated with you, the full story is on my Substack, Have You Talked to a Wall? I share pieces like this every week. Quiet explorations of creativity, perception, and the unnoticed corners of life. If that speaks to you, I'd love for you to subscribe, share it with a friend, or support the work if you can. It's slow, quiet work, but it's made for those who notice. Thanks for being here. See you next time.